Found out through this long convoluted process that this one student of mine, how much her mother hates her, screams at her all the time, tells her that she wishes she had never been born. The mother locks her out of the house, refuses to cook any meals, makes her babysit her little brother while her mother is entertaining her gentleman friends in the other room. It's awful. She can hear her mother moaning, and she's watching her through the crack in the door as they are carrying on in the other room. If you can believe it, I had a girl come in, this was last week sometime, and she was crying hard as she possibly could, would not be consoled. I finally got it out of her that her little brother had died that morning. My heart went out to her. I had so much sympathy, I gave her all kinds of privileges. Aww. Then another student told me that if something like that happens, the office will call them down and send them home. What? I got curious and I called home. I talked to the father and nothing happened to the little brother. He's fine. She had just made all this up. For sympathy, I guess. So I braced the girl. I told her that I just talked to her father and that her little brother was fine. She didn't believe me. She continued to cry her eyes out and would not be consoled. Finally, I had to send her to the office. I had a little girl the other day, just covered with bruises. I asked her what was wrong. She broke down crying and told her father beat her and her mother up right in front of her. Oh no! I had to call CPS, Child Protective Services, and oh man, what an ordeal that was. You're kidding me. I might have to testify in court sometime soon. Really looking forward to that. Ready for this? I was talking to one of my students, a little boy. His father was killed in Afghanistan. His stepfather was killed in Iraq. Can you believe that? That's terrible. I had this other student whose mother was pregnant by her boyfriend. The boyfriend and the mother had this big fight. The boyfriend kicks her in the stomach and they had to take her into the hospital where they had to prematurely deliver a dead baby. And he witnessed the whole thing. What happened to the boyfriend? He's in jail for murder. The boy's name was kept out of the papers, thank goodness. Kevin, did you hear that our split plans, our department split plans are due tomorrow? We have to do department split plans now? We already did split plans with our team. Yep, don't kill the messenger. Did you hear we have a department meeting today during early release? Again? Thanks for telling me. I can't seem to keep up with all my emails. And tomorrow we have a PLC meeting before school. Again? I can't keep up with all of this. I'm telling you, the water line is right here. I'm sinking and I'm drowning with all we're supposed to do around here. They pile on more and more and more until what? Do I have to drown to prove I'm doing the best I can? At least the water line's below your nose. For me, it's up to my eyeballs. I have a pre-observation meeting Monday. Wednesday, I have a formal observation with a pre and a post. I have 2 formal observations next week with 2 pre-observation meetings and 2 post-observation meetings. I have another data chat with Clara tomorrow. We're supposed to call home anytime a student gets 3 tardies. We're supposed to call home after any student gets 3 unexcused absences. We're supposed to call home anytime a student drops a letter grade or in conduct. And we're supposed to call home anytime a student gets a referral. They are setting us teachers up to fail. There's no other way to put it. We are spending so much time preparing to prepare our lesson plans, we don't have any time to actually prepare our lesson plans. Yet the peers and administrators' duty after every observation is to find fault. They have to find fault. If they don't find fault, they will get fired. We're supposed to know every piece of data about every child and then design our instructions for each individual student. Now, how's that supposed to work? Then reteach at every opportunity. Every opportunity? When does that happen? Plus all the pre-test, map tests, fair testing, formative assessments. When are we supposed to teach? They never give teachers time to do what we're actually supposed to do. Too much is too much. It's also completely demoralizing, deflating, and demotivating. Did you hear that the sub, Mrs. Peterson, told Clara, the principal, that she would never show up here again on a bet? What happened? They used to have coffee and bagels here for subs. And whenever they show up, they're always assigned to someplace else, someplace they're not expected to teach. And do they have any sub-plans? Peterson had a fight in her class. She called a red alert and no one showed up for 15 minutes. No. Then she got no lunch, no planning period, was assigned to a different class with no sub-plans, and had a fight in that class. Problem is, no one will come and be a substitute here twice. They get completely burned out. Last week, a sub walked out on our team in the middle of the day. I know 2 subs who will not set foot on Truman Middle School's property again. So, of course, we have to split a sick teacher's students every period among our team, so we get 4 or 5 strange students in our classrooms every period. Ugh, I believe that. Then we have to cover another sick teacher's class during our planning period. So we get no time to do anything for ourselves, like lesson planning, relaxing, taking it easy, having a break, grabbing a bite. I think they're doing a good job at empowering effective teachers. The goals they have set out for that are admirable. Which means now they must empower effective students, which they are not doing, just the opposite entirely. They have made the teacher responsible for the students' behavior and their academic achievement. And how long did it take these kids to realize that? About 2 hours? 2 days at the most? They know they can treat their teachers with complete disrespect with no consequences. Ms. Day, our new assistant principal, pulled me into her office the other day and made me explain why I was writing referrals for 2 students who were fighting outside my classroom. Oh, all too believable. She practically accused me of it being my fault. And we have to explain why we give out referrals as if it's our fault. These kids are acting like animals. Did you hear what happened to poor Maggie Callahan? This year she was given 2 periods of low 6th graders, 2 periods of low 7th graders, and 2 periods of low 8th graders for class assignments. Can you believe that? And that was for pure spite, pure punishment. She actually had the nerve to tell Clara what is actually going on around here. Can't do that. Maggie had a fight in her classroom, and when she tried to break it up, a student threatened her that if you ever get in my way again, I will knock you down. That's a quote. Oh my Lord. And he was back in her classroom after a 1-day suspension. Not to add gas to the fire, but I found out yesterday that the administration around here is more than a month behind processing the referrals. Really? And since the effective enforcement time for referrals is 30 days, therefore any referrals over 30 days will not be processed. Sound like a catch-22 to you? No. Yep. Well, I know part 2 of the Maggie getting punched story. After she made it clear that she intended to file charges, she was pulled into Mr. Kraber's office, the AP, and told not to do that because it would look bad for the school. What? Well, Maggie being Maggie, she's going ahead with it anyway. When the deputy came to take her statement, the deputy told her that Mr. Bose is now leaving Truman Middle School, and that since he was really the only one who actually did something about the referrals, that this was not going to be processed. That her statement was going to sit in a file forever. Doesn't the district understand what is happening here? I've seen it before. This is a case where the truth is the most dangerous commodity. As long as the boss can channel all information to her superiors, then the truth is whatever she says it is. But surely the district can see the flood of teachers bailing out of this place. There has been a 50% turnover at this campus in the last 2 years. This whole thing about rigor, teach bell to bell. Rigor. Well, I'm telling you, all this rigor is snapping teachers and students alike. That would require somebody actually taking responsibility for making a mistake. And since that's never going to happen, no changes will ever take place. Any kind of decent management structure will fix the problem and not the blame. In Japan maybe, but this is America, where if a mistake happens, we have to hang someone out to dry. Plus the fact they took a grant for $100 million. They can't acknowledge failure no matter how failing the system is around here. Therefore, they can't acknowledge failure no matter how bad it gets around here. Everything is sunny. Everything is rosy. There are no problems. We have no problems. Hey, we're not sinking. We're the model to the nation. Must be true because I saw it in a banner headline just the other week. Of course, they didn't speak with any teachers before writing that article. That's precisely why they can't admit any mistakes. They look like a pack of imbeciles who wasted $200 million. I thought the grant was for $100 million. The district had to match those funds. And you want to know where they got those matching funds? Where? From employee benefits. That's a true story. Unbelievable. No, all too believable. Yeah, they've set sail, but they haven't even bothered to build the boat yet. No wonder we're all sinking. And while all this is going on, that creature up in Tallahassee is waging war on state employees. And the reason for that is obvious. Most state employees are Democrats. Recent polls show that he's the most hated governor in Florida history. Do they tell policemen how to police? No. Do they tell firefighters how to fight fires? No. Do they tell teachers how to teach? Yes. These idiots who haven't been in a classroom since they were in grade school are telling teachers how to teach. How can this be? They try to balance the budget on the back of state workers and yet give tax breaks to billionaires. They are so mean and hateful, they are evil. Pure, unadulterated evil. This is such a strange profession. Most of the time all we are what? Wrestling referees, just trying to keep the rules in force. Hey, did any of you have Valerie Bowen 2 years ago? I tell you, I had her 2 years ago as a 6th grader and she was a handful. Me too. Completely disrespectful of everyone and everything, especially herself. Well, she came into my room yesterday wearing a really nice black dress and she was holding something and she was smiling at me. She showed me what it was. I didn't know we even had a award ceremony yesterday, but she had gotten a plaque saying that she was the Turnaround Student of the Year. And I was so pleased and proud of her. And she looked at me, she smiled, and she said, "I owe it all to you." That is so sweet. I had 2 boys come in my room a couple of weeks ago. I recognized them and I had them as students many years ago. I said, I see boys' faces in the men before me. They were all smiles. They shook my hand. They told me that they were heading for college next year. So they were seniors. I asked them, well, did I have anything to do with that? They smiled and they said, yes, you did. And they spent the next 5 minutes telling me everything that they remembered about my classroom 6 years ago. I had a student paint me a picture, and on the back she wrote, I was the best teacher in the history of the world. I got one of those little valentines that the kids give each other, and on it this little student from Thailand, an ESOL student, wrote, "You is my favorite teacher." Somehow I let it be known that in a couple of days it was going to be my birthday, and I'm telling you what, the word must have spread, because on my birthday I was inundated with really nice presents and cards and letters. I bet I got 30 letters from students saying how much they appreciated me. I have a whole wall filled of nice notes and letters and drawings that my students have given me. I've seen that. One time I got coverage during my planning period, and I had to go to an 8th grade math class of very, very low students. They were goofing off something incredible, so I gave them my how incredible, how wonderful math is lecture. How you can explain gravity with math. How if you put 2 atomic clocks that are synchronized on Earth and put one of them up in orbit, it changes time. That gravity affects time. That gravity is not an attraction between 2 bodies, but a bending of space-time. I asked them the age-old question of, if you're traveling at the speed of light away from Earth and you turn on a flashlight, will it shine? I gave them my story of Kip Thorne. You know who he is? No? Okay. Well, he got a PhD by the time he was 22 years old. When he was being interviewed at 26 for a full tenured professor at Caltech by the chairman of the department chair asked him, "Well, are you a mathematician or are you an astronomer?" And he thinks for a moment and goes, He got the job. Because once you get so high in mathematics that you can explain the galaxy, you can explain the universe. Black holes, string theories. During my lecture, this one kid was, whenever I wasn't looking at him, going, and I'd look over there, and he didn't know anything about it. So I told him to go stand over there. And then this other kid became so obnoxious. So I told him to go over there, and you can actually talk to this guy. Well, they were really pleased to be over on the side doing nothing. They were actually playing patty cake as loud as they can be. And I was continuing with my wonderful, how wonderful math is lecture. And finally, the bell rang. And I said, did anybody get anything out of, me up here talking for 55 minutes? They got up, they talked, and they just streamed out. But this one boy was sitting there, and he was looking up at me, and he goes, I did. And it made my week. I got a thank you letter from a student who wrote me and said, "You're the only teacher who actually teaches me something I can use." Well, I'm sure I don't have him. Me neither. I had a student one time raise her hand, and she asked me, "Why is there war?" Well, I wasn't in the best of moods, so I got on my George W. Bush rant about greed and corruption and the need of the industrial military complex to have an endless war, and the U.S. need to control Middle East oil. Well, I got an email from the Reverend Mr. So-and-so. It seems his son was in my class. And he started lecturing me about how dare I defame the country's greatest president. And he even had the nerve to tell me how I needed to educate myself by watching this one particular show on Fox News. Which show? I can't remember. I didn't give it any thought. I've never seen 10 seconds of Fox News ever. Yet I learned later through this boy's creative writings that his goal in life is to join the Marines when he's 18 years old so he can kill Jews. That's a true story. Can you imagine growing up in a household like that? Gives me the shudders. There is a general decline in humanity going on right now, I'm telling you what. Yep. Everything about humans is getting so infected. Probably because they're consuming all the poisons of our society. Humans are creating our own super germs. and breathing poisonous air and eating poisonous food out of poisonous soil and breathing poisonous air and drinking poisonous water and eating processed food. Processed with what? Some of my students with ADHD are so bad that I can tell within 5 minutes of class time whether these kids are on their medication or not, because if they're not, they are bouncing off the walls. And many families can't afford that medication, and the percentages are rising. The IQ of the human race is dropping sharply. I have no doubt that future historians will say that the 40s, 50s generation was the most courageous generation in the history of the world. They won a world war. The children of the 60s and 70s generation had the most heart. They stopped a war, an illegal war. Yep, we were also the last generation to have a loving parent at home. Then, because both parents of our generation had to go to work to pay the bills, we sat our kids in front of the TV and said, "Here, raise yourself, but don't go to that MTV channel now. Oh no." So of course they went to the MTV channel and they rotted their brains. And so, having no role model as parents, our children are putting their children in front of the computer and say, "Here, raise yourself, but don't go to those porn channels now." And of course they go straight to the porn channels and it's rotting their brain. So of course, now porn is their teacher, and that's where they're getting all the lessons of life. Forget truth, pride, respect, honor. They're 2 generations from a loving parent staying at home, caring about their education and their needs. Is it no wonder that they have no concept of decent behavior? Oh no. You're kidding me. Ugh.